Welcome everyone to IsisParenting's sleep support webinar and chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board certified lactation consultant, and board certified in pediatrics. I'm here in Needham, Massachusetts, in the home offices of IsisParenting. Today, our topic in the sleep webinar is going to be bedtime routines for older babies and toddlers. Here we're talking about the 18-month-old to 3 years or older. And 2 weeks ago, we recorded a bedtime routines for infants and younger toddlers. And this may be good anticipatory guidance for some of you who have children that are a little over a year old, but not quite older babies and toddlers yet. With me today, as she is on most Tuesdays at 12 noon, is my friend and colleague, Meg Casano. And I think I will turn the mic over to Meg and let her introduce herself, and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Meg. My background is as a registered nurse, and I also co-lead the ISIS sleep team with my partner, Erin Evans, and I'm a senior sleep consultant. I also, as you can see from my picture, have 4 little ones of my own. My oldest is just 6, so I know what it's like to juggle everything. And I have to just give a quick shout out to my friend Anne, who is from California, and I'm so surprised to see you on my list today. This is so nice. It just made me happy. Okay, so we are going to jump right into bedtime routine for older babies and toddlers. If you were with me 2 weeks ago, the first couple of slides will be a tiny bit of review. So what is a bedtime routine anyway? As early as 6 weeks, your babies can start to understand patterns and routine and start to sort of get the hang of what you'd like them to do. And so it's really important that you start doing some really predictable steps before you're going to ask your baby to go to bed. Think of it as sort of wind down time, transition time, getting ready for sleep. So parents often ask about things like bathing and diapering and massage and lotion and all that. So what I typically say is think of your nighttime routine as sort of you've got your evening routine and you've got your actual bedtime routine. Your evening routine it's very helpful to your child, especially toddlers who really thrive on predictability. It's really helpful if your evening routine is regular. You know, maybe you have dinner and you have a little runaround time and you do baths and you do teeth and jammies and all that. Your bedtime routine is really kind of sacred time, meaning during your evening routine, you might be doing this and that, throwing in a load of laundry, answering the door, answering the phone. Your bedtime routine is really kind of sacred. Once you enter into those last steps leading up to the time your child's going through so how long should that routine take? For bedtime, we are looking at 15 to 30 minutes being about the average length most parents spend getting their child ready for bed. Now remember, this may not include, for you, for your particular family, this may not include things like bathing, toileting, pajamas. It might if you kind of cruise through that pretty quickly, but for some toddlers, that's kind of like a really revved up sort of play and active time. And so bathing doesn't necessarily have to be part of your true bedtime routine. So we're looking at 15 to 30 minutes, enough time that you have time to transition from the events of your evening and settle down, wind down before bed. But you don't want it to be so long that your toddler is going to lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish by getting ready for bed. For your nap time, generally your nap time routine is more abbreviated. It's typically about 5 to 15 minutes long. Okay, so what should your bedtime routine include? For all babies and toddlers, regardless of age, you do a quick safety check. Things like, did anybody put a toy into toddler's crib that's not safe? If you have an older child, maybe 2.5 or 3 years old, you're just double checking the baby proofing of the environment that you have set up. especially, windows, cords, wires, all the things that make us crazy as moms. So you're just making sure nothing happened through the events of the day, that, you don't have to deal with anything before your child's going to bed. You're going to do a check of the environment. We always talk about at ISIS making sure the sleep environment is cool, it's dark, it's quiet. We still recommend using a continuous white noise machine for older babies and toddlers to help mask some of those environmental noises. So you might check back at some of the webinars we've done. Now that it's getting to be winter, don't feel like you have to crank your heat up to 75, 78 degrees overnight. You want actually cooler temperatures, or the body temperature has to drop during the night, so you don't want your child to be overbundled, overheating. You don't want them to be sweating. You do want feet to be covered. I'm going to mention that. Actually, I meant to mention that in my previous slide. Nancy's mentioning it, I see here. You do want your child's feet to be covered. So whatever you have going on with whatever kind of, if you're using a sleep sack, if you're using a blanket, you do want your child's feet to be covered. Warm feet promote sleep. When you're doing your bedtime routine, you are having some dim lighting. Again, it's a little bit of transition time from your sort of go-go activity of the evening to falling asleep, to give your child time to wind down and settle down. So low lights, about 15 minutes, up to 30 minutes before bedtime may be helpful. If you do have TV as part of, your events in your evening, try to keep TV time 30 minutes or more away from the time you'd actually like your child to fall asleep. The TV, although a child is generally still, the lights of the TV are very stimulating. So we talk about maintaining the darkness of the room, and the blue and green colored lights on a TV and the flashing lights are actually very stimulating to a child. So keep that away from the time you want your child falling to sleep. A bedtime routine, even for older babies who are 18 months to 3 years old, you do want to make sure they're not going to bed hungry. A lot of toddlers are sort of picking at their dinner at 5 or 5:30, and then it might be a couple of hours before they're actually going to bed. So don't be afraid to offer a healthy snack, something with some protein, or a sippy cup of milk, a bottle for a bottle for maybe some of the younger babies or the younger toddlers in this age range. But you also want to try not to have your milk be the very last thing that you're doing before bed. In other words, your baby is not actually sucking himself to sleep on the bottle. So this is a great time to introduce toothbrushing for a child. It's really important at this age that starts to become a regular habit of your bedtime routines, and it's another reason why you don't want milk to be the very last thing that your child's doing. Who's falling asleep with a bottle and a sippy cup, how do I move it? And you can do this in a couple of ways. If your child and you really love the last snuggle, whether it's breastfeeding or I'm saying bottle, but it could be sippy cup, it could be breastfeeding, it could be bottle. If your child really loves that last snuggle before bed, see if you can move the majority of the milk, like maybe you're doing a full nursing session, maybe you're giving 3/4 of your sippy cup or of your bottle before you do, say, your PJs and your bath and all that, so that you're sure that your child has a full tummy and is going to bed after having eaten. But then you save sort of that last couple of ounces or the last bit of the sippy cup, or you sort of have a recreational nursing session, sort of a dessert nursing session right before bedtime to do that last snuggle and closeness. So you're still allowing baby to get calm and rested, and you're still using what works to get your baby ready for bed. But now you're in more control. You can end the nursing session, or the bottle is gone, or the sippy cup is gone, and the milk is gone before your baby has had the same amount of time to actually fully fall asleep while drinking the milk. And then maybe move on to starting a new sleep association like rocking or walking around the room before placing into the crib. We can map out some of that. I'm going to check the questions at the end. In your bedtime routine, you're always including dry diaper or toileting for a toddler on the older side of this age range. Okay, optional parts of your bedtime routine. This is a great age to, if your child is interested, to have an attachment object. Generally around age 1 is when your child can start to really love a thing. Not all kids will attach to something, and some kids attach to sort of odd things, like a burp cloth or something that you didn't exactly plan on. But having something that's small and designed specifically for a child for sleep. We love the Angel Deer products, like this little guy is holding. It's like the little tiny blankie size of a washcloth with a little animal head. A little lovey like that is great to help your toddler turn to for comfort in the night. You may still be zipping into a sleep sack. I actually love sleep sacks for toddlers. I really encourage them. Your toddler is not old enough to be readjusting blankets in the night. And if you are concerned about your toddler being cold, it might cause you to do some sort of accidental parenting or unnecessary parenting that could be stimulating in the night if you're concerned about blankets falling off. So using a sleep sack can solve some of that. It also can prevent climbing for some toddlers. It may help prevent them from hoisting a leg up over the side of the crib. You may be including lullabies, songs, stories. If you are going to be doing some bedtime stories in the toddler age group, I do recommend that you stick to some familiar favorites. Read your toddler 1,000 books all day, of course, but when it comes to bedtime, try to stick to some nice, predictable favorites that aren't kind of new and stimulating. It's often helpful to have a little basket of bedtime stories. Maybe you have a selection of 5 or 6 that you're reading. Your child can pick 2 or 3, and you can change it up every few weeks. But you want to be pretty predictable with that at bedtime. Okay, you might want to say goodnight to photos or objects in the room. You might want to say some sort of special words or prayers. With toddlers, they really like ritualistic elements of a bedtime routine. So things like counting, touch, rhyming, these are elements that you may think of this in terms of what's my older child, my older baby bedtime routine. These are things that are different from what we talked about last time, the younger baby, the six weeks to a year and a half. For older toddlers, you're looking to add some elements that are soothing to an older child, and adding a soothing element. So sometimes toddlers, we'll talk about this in the next slide, toddlers may start to develop some anxieties, or you might be getting a little pushback at bedtime, and sometimes you might find it helpful to add some extra soothing, something that you may not have had to do with your child when they were 6 months old or 8 months old, when they just sort of happily went to sleep in their crib without a whole lot of effort. The toddlers, you may have to add something, and it may be, again, like a counting, a touch, adding some special prayers. It might be kneeling down by the side of the crib or side of the bed and adding something that you haven't done before, but that's providing a lot of extra reassurance to your child. Okay, so trouble spots with toddlers. So once you've sort of thought about, okay, what is my bedtime routine going to look like? How long is mine going to be? And what are the elements that my bedtime routine is going to include? And you say, okay, well, this is all well and good. I'm trying to do this, but, I've got dawdling, I've got thigh tracking, I've got, one more this and that, unreasonable demands. Now, I say unreasonable demands. It may, for some families might find, what constitutes unreasonable demand different than another. Anything from, put me in my car seat and drive me around the neighborhood 10 times to I want another. toddler issues. Your bedtime routine can help. Certainly, there are other things I would be looking at if you were starting to develop bedtime battles. I would be looking very closely at your schedule, at your nap time and where that's landed, what your window of wakefulness is at the end of the day, and how high your child's sleep pressure is. These are things that we've talked about in the toddler segments that you can go back and double check. I would be looking very carefully at your bedtime routine. Is anything changing overnight? Do you have a perfect sleep environment? But in terms of your bedtime routine, this is also one component that I'm looking at. And for this, I would remind you that your bedtime routine and you following through and doing what you say you'll do is actually anxiety reducing to your child. Remember that it is your child's job as a toddler to see, to test limits. Okay, that's a development that's very appropriate developmentally. And so it's the whole inch mile, scenario. If your child thinks they can get an inch, they will try for a mile every time. So I'm not saying be mean about it or by any stretch. I'm saying just be firm. Do what you'll say you'll do. That actually is going to be anxiety reducing for your child. Some kids find it helpful if you make a chart, and you'll call it a routine chart. And you can do things like snap some pictures on your iPhone and run them off on your printer. I mean, this could take you 10 minutes. You could go to Google Images and download some pictures of children or babies doing things that you'd like to do in your bedtime routine, like reading a story, singing a song, lying down. I mean, you can even say to your child, okay, lie in your bed and close your eyes. I'm going to take your picture. And that would be the last element on your bedtime routine. But this way it sort of takes the onus off you. It's not, mommy and daddy are telling me what I have to do. It's, you can point to the chart and say, here, it says right on your chart, let's see what comes next. And if you're finding that you're getting sort of pushback at any point along the way, like, I don't want to read books, or I didn't want that book, I wanted another book, or here are 10 books, or I'm going to run around and throw my books, or whatever it might be, then, depending on the age of your child, maybe not with an 18-month-old, but certainly with a 2.5 or 3-year-old, you might say something like, okay, so, I can see maybe we're not, you're not ready for books tonight, so let's see what comes next on your list. And, you go on to saying your prayer or singing your lullaby, and then it's off to bed. And if you do that really consistently in a very gentle and calm way, your child is going to get on board because he will want to sit and read books with you. He's not going to want this to end earlier. Okay, so make your chart. Think before you do this what you'd like to be on your chart and what you can do regularly, more often than not, and then follow through with it in a regular order. Give your child choices when possible. Everything from what pajamas to what story to what color sippy cup do you want tonight. I'm not saying you have to spend your whole night offering choices, but do give choices where you can, but not an overwhelming number of choices. Like, my example about the books, don't just, lead them in the direction of the bookshelf and say, pick one when you have 200 there. Have a little basket of familiar favorites and they can pick one or two. And then if you say it's 2 books, then it's 2 books. Stick to that. Remember that if they think they can get an inch, they will try for a mile. So do what you say you're going to do. Have an end to your bedtime routine. Sometimes an auditory cue may be helpful, like maybe you actually set some sort of alarm, and I don't mean an awful beeping alarm. I mean like some music that will come on. A lot of the iPads and iPhones now have great apps for this, or you can set, like crickets chirping or the duck quacking. And you can sort of say, okay, when we hear the ducky, it's time for kiss goodnight. And so then again, it's not you, mom or dad or caregiver saying, okay, you have to go to bed. It's sort of this external cue that everyone is responding to. You may also just choose to maybe lie down with your child, or you sit next to your child's crib, you sing a song, you play some music, and when that song is over or when that music ends, that signifies the end of the bedtime routine. And then finally, it's going to be really important from a psychological standpoint to your child that you turn into night mode, your night mommy, night daddy, night caregiver, that you become very calm, very neutral. You remain gentle and loving as always, but you are giving, you're trying not to give any positive feedback for any antics that your child's trying to do. So you're staying quiet, calm, boring, and now if you are getting any resistance from your bedtime, in the falling asleep process, now you would approach this in perhaps a different strategy, but using the bedtime routine elements leading up to this point is just a really important way to be fair to your child and to cue them consistently and to lead them through these steps that are designed to help them go to sleep. Once you do this and you do this regularly, then you can feel better about having your expectation be, now it is time for sleep. Now you know that you've really helped show your child consistently that it's time for bed. And now, again, if you're getting any sort of residual pushback now from your child, you can still be feeling like do we do if we're still having some resistance at bedtime? But be really consistent. Use that routine chart. That's really helpful. Use those auditory cues. And generally, you will see your child jump on board with what you're trying to do with your bedtime routine. Okay, and like I said, if you felt like you needed more information, we always do sleep consultations, and I love toddlers, especially the 2 to 3-year-old age range are my favorite. There are a bunch of other things that are really helpful for toddlers that I love to go through with parents. So that's always an option for you too. Okay, so I think I'm going to try to see if I can see the questions.